Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. It is our midweek, our Wednesday show, Sam. Always fun. We're going to be all over the place with some great stuff, including a Hall of Famer joining us, Ronde Barber.
Hall of Famer.
Yeah. We were just counting the number of Hall of Famers we've had on the show. We got a handful, historically.
Yeah.
Joe Thomas, Kurt Warner. Soon, Antonio Gates. We had him the day after he didn't get into the Hall of Fame last year. He was sad, but we called him future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, maybe Whitworth, Andrew Whitworth.
Maybe Andrew Whitworth. Yeah,
I think he deserves it. I don't know if he'll get in.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the way that
he's at least in the Hall of Very Good. But yeah, we enjoy. We'll enjoy. We will.
Oh, I think Emmett Smith.
Emmett. We had Emmett. Slinging tequila on here before.
Tequila.
So yeah, we're excited. Check the mic. Big show. Lots happened since we last talked on Monday. All sorts of wide receiver trades. There was Monday Night Football. Shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. They will. We'll be given my lineup, and I'm now 8 for 8 in all of my projections so far. Because James Cook didn't play, they threw it out, and we 3x the money instead of 5x or 7x or whatever I had on that. So it's great.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
That I'm good at this so far.
No, that you got a freebie. That they just cut you a break because your guy didn't play because you didn't know that the guy you were picking wasn't even going to play in the game.
That's how good PrizePicks is.
Yeah, I mean
they're not in there
from a consumer standpoint. It's outstanding. From a you caught a break there standpoint, I feel less good about it.
So you guys could join in as well. Download the PrizePicks app. Use code Check the Mic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. So the two teams that played on Monday Night Football, New York Jets and Buffalo Bills. Bills got the win. They're 4-2. Jets fall to 2-4. Bills. It was 23-20. Since that time, we knew the next morning, like as soon as that game was going on, Davante Adams apparently was on a plane across the country to join the Jets.
Yeah.
So the Jets traded for Davante Adams, and then the Bills traded for Amari Cooper. Since that game, which we broke down in incredible detail on Monday night, instantly, right here on the YouTube channel, mostly going through all the ridiculous flags that were thrown during that game. So overshadowing the flags now, we have a couple wide receiver trades since that point.
Yeah, so just to quickly, I mean, for the people that didn't watch the quick recap after the game, honestly, the biggest takeaway from this game is it's one of the worst officiated games ever. And there were so many flags and so many bad decisions from a penalty point of view. It's difficult to say, it really favored the Jets, it really favored the Bills. Everybody got hosed, including the people watching the game, because of how many flags were thrown in this game. So just a terribly officiated game. And there were some really key game-changing decisions by the officials. So just so many penalties. Overall, you would say the right team won that game, right? Like, I know the Jets had the chance to snatch it at the end. I think overall the Bills were the better team. And by and large, it played out that way.
We got to see another Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary. I mean, lost in that whole thing was the Jets missed 2 field goals. I would look at it 2 different ways. I still think the Hail Mary's luck, even though Rodgers seems to have more success than anyone in history. He does. That's his 4th Hail Mary touchdown. Mm-hmm. So you could, maybe offset that with there was 2 missed field goals. They very easily could have scored, 27, 26 points instead of the 20 that they ended up with. But it still felt like the best Jets offense that we've seen. Todd Downing calling the plays. And despite all that, I think Jets fans still coming out of that with a bitter taste in their mouth because they couldn't beat the defending AFC East champion Bills. They had opportunities.
Yep.
They had a game-ending drive opportunity. Aaron Rodgers threw it up the red line, as he explained. Mike Williams was supposed to be running the red line, and he deviated from the red line, and Aaron Rodgers threw a game-ending interception, and so Mike Williams will never see a football again.
He threw the ball up the red line. He then threw a game-ending interception, and he then shortly thereafter threw his wide receiver under the bus, all in fairly rapid succession.
I mean, he told the truth.
He did. So Ryan Fitzpatrick is tweeting about this. It's like, this is the part of Aaron Rodgers that he doesn't really understand. He's like, why can't he just take all the blame publicly and then address the finer coaching points that Rodgers is trying to make privately, which is a fair point. Like, on the one hand, I have sympathy with the idea if he was asked a question, he theoretically, I guess, though we only have his word on it, accurately articulated what went wrong in the play, right? It was clearly some kind of miscommunication. It wasn't just Rodgers threw the ball 15 yards away from where he wanted it. Like, there was something weird on that play. And, by the way, Mike Williams fell over trying to adjust to it, which didn't help either. So if we assume Rodgers is telling the truth, that that's what happened on the play, on the one hand, he was asked a question, he told the truth and told people what happened. And isn't that what we want when we're asking these guys questions at a podium? On the other hand, I do have some sympathy with what Fitzpatrick says, which is, generally speaking, the quarterback takes care of that privately.
You take the blame, deflect the credit.
Yeah.
Take the blame, deflect the credit. That's what the QB generally does.
Right. So I can see it both ways of that argument. Like, I kind of like that he just told the truth and answered the question. I also think most of the time quarterbacks don't do that.
Anyway, that interception ended the comeback attempt for the Jets. The one thing that he said, I mean, this was what, 3rd and 16, because of course there was a penalty that kind of set that up. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just trying to rewatch it again just to see. I don't know what Mike Williams was doing. Rodgers was saying that he kind of adjusted his throw.
Yeah, well, he said he was throwing it basically
when
blind
he noticed
to where he was supposed to be, and midway through the throwing motion, he was like, oh, he's not actually where he's supposed to be, and tried to change it slightly.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, that ended the game. The game was most notable at the time for all of the penalties. There was a horrible roughing call on Aaron Rodgers where he, again, was honest and said that wasn't roughing against me. A.J. Epinesa tackled him. There was another roughing that the Jets got called for against the Bills that was probably as bad, if not worse. So it was just ugly. A lot of flags, 22 actual accepted penalties, but there was probably another 8 to 10 that were in like the offsetting or declined category. It was a rough game to watch.
Yeah,
in primetime.
Not great.
And then since that point, so the Jets are sitting here at 2-4. We wake up on Tuesday morning, and like last week, on Tuesday morning they fire Robert Saleh. This Tuesday morning they trade for Davante Adams. Not a huge surprise here. Certainly bigger surprise that Amari Cooper goes to the Bills. Not a huge surprise to see Davante Adams with the Jets. Everybody expected this.
Yeah.
So now Davante, who's missed the last couple games with a hamstring injury, is fully healed and ready to go and play this week for the Jets against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I mean, so unsurprising that he was already on the plane at the time, like to the point where we got that Pat McAfee show reveal, right, where Rodgers is doing his usual appearance on the show, and then over his shoulder, Davante Adams shows up because he's already there. He's been there a while.
That's good. I'm a big believer in that's good TV.
Oh, it's a great moment.
When you just break into shows. We've done that here in the studio historically, break into shows, let people break in on us. I think that's good. That's real reality TV, is when Davante Adams shows up during Aaron Rodgers' interview.
It was a great moment, like a genuinely great TV moment. Rodgers kind of gives him the eyes, right? And then Davante just appears over his shoulder on camera.
So we talked about our thoughts on this yesterday. High level, I think Aaron Rodgers, it seems like we see this with veteran quarterbacks a lot. Sometimes it takes a while for people to earn their trust. The fact that him and Mike Williams, this wasn't the only time him and Mike Williams weren't on the same page. I mean, it was like the simplest 2-yard hot route against a blitz that same night where Rodgers basically like hit him in the crotch with a pass that Mike Williams was wasn't expecting. And they just haven't been on the same page. And that is why Allen Lazard has a job for the Jets, because he's going to be in the same place where Aaron Rodgers expects him to be. But Allen Lazard as the 2, not great. You add Davante Adams to the mix. Now you have Garrett Wilson, Davante Adams, and Allen Lazard, a chance for this Jets offense to really start moving the ball more effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good move for the Jets. It's a 3rd-round pick, essentially a conditional one that can become a 2nd only if Adams makes an all-pro team or he's on the roster while the Jets are in a championship game / Super Bowl. If any of those happens, it's probably worth doing anyway. Even for the 2nd-round pick. So that part makes sense. If it's just a 3rd-round pick, what is a 3rd-round pick on top of what you're already all in for anyway at this point? Like, if it all doesn't work, I think pretty much everybody in the building is getting fired anyway. I don't imagine Joe Douglas survives a season where they don't make the postseason. So from his perspective, what difference does it make? Let's go for it. It's costing us a 3rd-round draft pick and Adam's salary for the rest of the year. It makes us better. Let's go.
They're already all in. They're already there. And look, I still think the Jets have issues stopping the run, but I've got fewer concerns about their defense. Fewer concerns there. They have a very good pass defense, still have the ability to put pressure on the quarterback, make life difficult for quarterbacks. It is this offense that has been holding them down. It is kind of funny. Intern Anthony reminds us, same number of points scored for the Jets. Again, after 6 weeks this year, same as last year when Aaron Rodgers played just 4 snaps and Zach Wilson was the starter. We're not equating Aaron Rodgers to Zach Wilson. It is just kind of funny.
Just the points are.
The points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not. The points are equating.
The points are equating. The quarterbacks, maybe not, are the same. But the fact that they're putting up the same number of points. Now, I don't remember how many defensive touchdowns they had back then. I don't know. But it doesn't matter. This is funny. The fact that Aaron Rodgers has been healthy, relatively. I mean, he comes up limping 2 to 3 times a game now after a hit. But he's been healthy. He's the best quarterback they've had here in a long, long time. And they're still not scoring a ton of points.
Yeah, I mean, who was it last week that was like, Rodgers is playing terribly, right? After that Vikings game. And it's like, no.
Shannon?
I can't remember. One of the Shouty Show people. But it's like, he isn't playing terribly. He had a bad game, but Rodgers overall this season has not been bad. And we saw against the Bills, like, he had a pretty good game. And okay, the interception to end it, how much blame you want to put on him, whatever. Like, it wasn't perfect, but he played pretty well against Buffalo, right? He's had other games this season where he's played pretty well. The overall result has ended up in the same ballpark points-wise for offense as Zach Wilson. So that's not great. But this is why reactionary declarative statements after one bad game are stupid. Rodgers has not played terribly. He played pretty well in this game. You add Davante Adams to the mix, it should be a significant upgrade at an important position. Are the Jets completely dead and buried? It's 2-4. This was a really bad game to drop because it was Buffalo, but they're a game outside of the wild card in the AFC where a lot of theoretically good teams have not won a lot of games. So they're still alive, and this is the kind of move that can make them closer to rescuing the season.
I don't think Rodgers is playing horribly. I also think he deserves some of the blame for the offense and the overall ineffectiveness, maybe more than, say, like the throw-for-throw efficiency would suggest. Let me see a couple different places where he ranks. I think it's worth discussing. Right, currently number 11 overall grade by PFF, but he's lower in some of the other production metrics. So like 22nd in ESPN's QBR. He's kind of low in EPA per play. So I think it's interesting because I usually lean on the PFF grade as the isolating factor of the quarterback. But I do feel like with Rodgers, because he's had an impact on who the players are, having more control at the line of scrimmage, the overall efficiency of the offense probably lands on him a little bit more than some of the other quarterbacks when you're just looking at their play versus production. So just something to keep an eye on because he's still in his 40s and he's not playing at an MVP caliber level and everyone's just letting him down. Like, he's a good quarterback. They should be more effective. They should be scoring more points. And I think having Davante Adams and the way Garrett Wilson played the other night, I think does make this offense much better. I mean, Adams, real quick, just to put a bow on the Adams discussion, before the hamstring injury, still looked fine, right? He was dominant in the fourth quarter against the Ravens back in week 2. That's why the Raiders won that game. Back-to-back huge plays by Davante Adams, including a great toe tap along the sideline. Like, the guy can still play. But yeah, they haven't played together in a few years. They're both older, and I don't think it'll look as effective as it did in Green Bay, but it's a huge addition to this offense.
Right. I mean, I don't anticipate Rodgers immediately goes back to being, or Adams rather, immediately goes back to being basically the best wide receiver in the NFL, or at least 1 and 1A with Justin Jefferson. And, I doubt the Jets do either, which is why they're happy to put the stipulation that if he does end up as a first or second team All-Pro, they can upgrade the pick. But I think he can be still very, very good. And even if he's, forget 1-1A in the NFL, even if he becomes 1-1A in the own offense, right? That neither one of them, maybe Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams is now a true, legitimate superstar number 1. Between the two of them, even if they're both high-end twos, that makes it an upgrade, and it makes one of them like the a clear 1 and a 2 in a normal offense. If they're both high-end twos, it's probably the same kind of thing, right? So either way, I think it's a good move for the Jets. I think being all in a little bit more is whatever. It's no different. They're already all in, so what the hell. And then from the Raiders side of this, good work. They got a pick for a guy that wanted out of there, that the experiment had failed in terms of, they never found a quarterback for him. So they got a reasonable pick back with a vague chance of an upgrade to a very good pick, and they got a salary off their books for a guy that may have been checking out anyway.
Yeah, I saw people say, well, they traded a 1 and a 2 for Davante and then traded him for a 3.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, but they also got 3 years of service, two plus years of service out of him, and you took a chance. I didn't like it at the time because I thought the Raiders were rebuilding. But look, from Tom Telesco's standpoint, he's now the GM. It's a sunk cost.
Yes.
You got a 3 for a guy that's not there, that doesn't want to be there. I think from Telesco's standpoint, that ends up being a good move for the Raiders.
I mean, look, you can't, if you want to look at the totality of the moves surrounding Davante Adams from a Raiders point of view, it's not good. But the move to get him has already been done years ago. So we're not analyzing that right now. We're analyzing a sunk cost of Davante Adams. What can you do with that? You either eat it and keep paying him money to linger with a hamstring injury on the sideline, or you get rid of him for a third-round pick. You get his salary off your books, and you get a third-round pick back, which can become a 2 if miracles happen. That's good business.
All right, so the other big move, as we mentioned earlier, and we apologize, we didn't do an instant reaction to this trade. We saved it for today. Buffalo Bills trading for Amari Cooper. They get Amari Cooper and a 2025 6th-round pick in exchange for a 3rd-round pick next year and a 7th-round selection in 2026. So that's another good little sneaky good piece of the trade for the Bills. It's a little pick exchange, a 6 and a 7 in exchange. So it's essentially Cooper for a 3 with the pick exchange, 6 and a 7. So the Buffalo Bills, where we spent so much time this offseason talking about their wide receiver situation, and here's the quick history of it. They had Stephon Diggs. Diggs kind of ran himself out of town. That ended. They trade Diggs for a 2nd-round pick. This is interesting when you look at all this, right? They trade Diggs for a 2nd-round pick with the Houston Texans, then go have that late 1st-round pick. They trade down. As everybody knows, the big story, the Chiefs trade up. They take Xavier Worthy. A few more receivers go off the board. The Bills take the 8th wide receiver off the board instead of the 5th. It's Keon Coleman. And we were theorizing all offseason, well, is Keon Coleman going to be the Stephon Diggs like-for-like replacement? Or is it all the other receiving talent who are more slot-driven, yak-driven? Are those guys going to be the receivers who get more of the action? We've seen more of the yak-heavy approach from the Bills. Still have those questions about, do they have the guy that can win one-on-one on the outside? I don't think Keon Coleman has shown that he can be that guy. So now the Bills come back, give up a 3 for Amari Cooper. And so when you look at it in totality, it's kind of like Amari Cooper for Stephon Diggs over time, and you got a 2 back and you gave up a 3 to kind of make that exchange. How's this going to work out here for the Bills?
I really like this move for the Bills. I mean, I think Amari Cooper is still a high-end wide receiver. His performance this year is not particularly good. Neither is anybody else's in Cleveland, and you can certainly point to one obvious factor for that being the case. Cooper comes in. He has experience being that X-wide receiver. He's the one guy now on that depth chart where you can say he can win on the outside, clean, as an X receiver consistently. We know that. He's always done it every single spot. He's still got gas in the tank. I don't see him physically declining. So this is a move from Buffalo's perspective where they get the guy that's been missing from that offense. And even if it hasn't been a massive problem for them this season, like even if they could make it work doing other things, they now have a different way to win that they had a week ago. And that's huge for them. So I think it's a good move. It's a good addition. It fills a need, a gaping absence of skill set within that offense. And it gives them a higher chance of winning games and winning, the silverware at the end of the season. From the Browns' perspective, we talked about this when Brad came on, right? This getting that 3rd-round pick back, that's why you shift his contract around, right? That's why you make those moves in the offseason, because you could essentially generate a higher pick than if they just had to get rid of him at this point in the season with the old contract, because Buffalo's also picking up very little money in this, right? They're not paying him a lot because Cleveland's already moved that money around, so the Browns get a 3rd-round pick back for this.
I want to talk about the Bills a little bit more, but the Browns also traded a 5 for Amari Cooper in the first place.
Right.
And then traded him out for a third. I mean, look, doesn't feel good in Cleveland right now at 1-5, but those little moves should add up. If you didn't have historically bad quarterback play, and the offensive line being an absolute train wreck, you'd look at a lot of these moves and say that's obviously shrewd business, right? You traded. We were just talking about Davante Adams and the Raiders, like they got a lesser pick for him, but hey, they at least got him to play football for them for a little bit. The Browns got Amari Cooper for 2+ years for a 5th-round pick and then flipped him for a 3. That is very good business over time. From the Bills' perspective, I just want to talk about Amari. I mean, he's sitting here in his 10th year, and just a fascinating player because he's been with the Raiders, Cowboys, and the Browns. And I just want to go through his career just a little bit, right? As a rookie, he was a rookie in 2015, number 4 overall pick. In 2016, this was election year Derek Carr. Don't forget, this was election year Carr. That's the best we ever see Derek Carr, right? 16, 20, 24. That's when he plays his best, per our listeners. But 2016, he was like the catalyst for Derek Carr's year 3 breakout when he had one of his best statistical seasons. And then 2 years later, he's getting traded, right? He kind of like drops off in 17 and then gets traded to the Cowboys. When he gets traded to the Cowboys in 18, his addition coincides with Dak Prescott's best statistical output. And you take Dak's stats from 18 through 21 when Amari Cooper was there, and and you saw a bump, right? You saw better production from Dak Prescott relative to where he was before. But he kind of ran himself out of town. In Dallas, traded for a 5. With the Browns in 22 and 23, he has his highest yards per route run, over 2 yards per route run. He had never done that previously in his career. Again, using PFF stats here to kind of paint a picture. And now he's out, right? Now in year 3 with Cleveland, yes, he has a 63 PFF grade, and he's got the worst production of his career. The context there is Watson's playing horribly at quarterback. The O-line's terrible. I think he could still play, but it is fascinating to me that the first 2 years of Amari Cooper, 2.5, 3 years in a place are good, and then he kind of runs himself out of town. All that to be said, it's like you have fresh Amari Cooper, fresh in Buffalo Amari Cooper. That might bode well, at least for a little bit here for the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. He's a good wide receiver. He may not be a great one, and he certainly is inconsistent sometimes. Like, he's got a lot of drops this season. He has years where he has a lot of drops. That's been a hallmark of his career as well. It's, they haven't traded for Justin Jefferson here, right? But they have traded for a guy that can win on the outside where they don't have anybody. I mean, there was a play against the Jets where Keon Coleman had a go route against DJ Reed. He got locked up at the line. He never got separation. The ball arrived. It arrived perfectly. It landed in his hands. And even at the contested catch, DJ Reed had a hand in there and ripped it out as well. It's like you failed every step of that way. Like, that's okay. The no separation part, fair enough. That's part of your game. We've kind of accepted that. But you have to win at the catch point if you're going to be that guy. Allen put the ball where it needed to be. He gave you that chance. You have to win that catch, and this is the problem with those contested catch people. It's the problem with that approach, is that it's hard to do that because NFL defenders are really good, and if he keeps his hand in there, it's really hard to come down with that ball. That play, and look, Keon Coleman's made some plays this season. I'm not writing him off or anything, but like that play is why you go and get an Amari Cooper, because Cooper can win those routes. Cooper can beat a guy like DJ Reed, who's having an incredible season. He can win one-on-one on a go route. And at the moment, the Bills don't have anybody that can do that.
Yeah, and look, anytime you get a good wide receiver, and I'm with you on Amari. I don't think he's ever been A.J. Brown type level, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. I don't think he's ever been at that level. An absolute game-changing one. But I think he's like a low-end one. I don't know, maybe he's a whatever that means. But yeah. It's like he's not going to be the take over the game type of guy. But you'll have some games, 8 catches, 100-plus yards, good route runner, and the Bills needed this. Another option to go with Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir, and then you can get the occasional highlight reel play from Keon Coleman, and you don't have to rely on him as much. It does make the entire offense better.
He also has games where he can go off, for huge performances. Like, he's capable of doing that. It's just the consistency has never been there for him. And I think that's part of why teams get frustrated and they run him out of town after a couple of years.
Anything else on Cooper? We'll talk about the Browns later because we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson.
Right.
Again, I like this move in isolation. Still doesn't feel great in Cleveland because of how things are going there. They have to figure out replacing Amari Cooper now as they try to dig out of a 1-5 hole. But the totality of the business there, again, get him for 5, trading him for 3 after 2 years. A good job by the Browns. And it also makes Cowboys fans question themselves even more. Why did we trade him for a 5 2 years ago? He's, 2 years older now, 3 years older. Yeah. Other news this week. Russell Wilson may be in line to get the start for the Pittsburgh Steelers over Justin Fields.
Isn't that, if not confirmed, then expected?
I think it's expected. I don't know if it's confirmed. But he's taking first-team reps at practice. The Steelers are 4-2, and Justin Fields has been the quarterback for that 4-2 start for Pittsburgh. Discuss. Is this the right move for the Steelers?
I don't think we're going to be able to know that until we see it play out. I don't think you can definitively say it either way, right? You can definitely say, look, people are pointing to these individual plays where the Steelers' offensive line just doesn't get out of its stance or whatever, and Justin Fields turns that into a positive play by being an athletic freak. Entirely justified. And on those specific plays, Russell Wilson is likely dead and buried behind the offensive line, and it's a sack. So you've created that dynamic where potentially positive scrambles now equal sacks. You've probably also created a dynamic where the passing game is more efficient on a down-to-down basis. Doesn't mean it's going to be great, but Russell Wilson is probably still, even in this state, a better passer on a down-to-down basis, drive-to-drive basis than Justin Fields is, certainly than Justin Fields over the last couple of weeks. And ultimately, the Steelers have always maintained that Russell Wilson is QB1. He's injured. Fields is manning the ship while that happens, and when he's healthy again, we're going back to him. Had Justin Fields played really well the last 2 weeks, as a passer in particular, I think they would have had cover to say, okay, he's won the job. We've gone in a different direction now. He didn't. He's had his 2 worst games as a passer in the last 2 weeks. So I think that's given them cover to go back to Wilson. Now, if Wilson stinks the first couple of weeks, I think you can make the case that we go back to Fields and we have a higher baseline there. We don't need him to be amazing. The defense is great. He adds value as a runner. We can make the switch. But I don't think you can definitively say, based off what Fields has done, it's the wrong call to put Wilson back.
Perfect fence-sitting answer here for Check the Mic. That's how we do it, right? Because everybody's over there. We'll get to the Shouty Show segment later. Everybody's like, this is ridiculous. They're 4-2. This is Justin Fields. He's improving. Yeah. It's Justin Fields. You can't go back to Russ. Have you seen Russ lately? He hasn't been good in 4 years. I think the reality is they're probably very similar as quarterbacks right now. But I also think there's a chance that Russ can be better.
Yeah.
Right? There's a chance that Russ can be better. I think we're a little skewed by how low our expectations have been for Justin Fields after what we saw in Chicago. Is he better so far in Pittsburgh? Absolutely. First read's better. Accuracy's better. A game like last week where he was not great as a passer, but he still makes things happen with his legs, and he runs for 2 touchdowns, and he fixes broken plays. But the reality of Justin Fields' actual production, they're not putting up a lot of points. He's got a PFF grade of 71. That's dead smack in the middle, 16th in the NFL right now. Again, using ESPN's QBR, which is a little bit more results-oriented, right? Like how much of the results are they want to put credit to the quarterback, but there's a few more factors in there. But it factors in running a lot, and it factors in sacks and negative plays. He's 20th in that. It's not like there's advanced metrics or traditional metrics where Justin Fields is top 10 in anything. So you're not benching a top 10 quarterback, but you're bringing in Russell Wilson, who, assuming he's not rusty here, is probably a similar level quarterback. However, the upside of maybe being able to get the ball down the field to George Pickens and Calvin Austin a little bit more consistently, I think is there. So I don't hate it as a move. I'm with you. I'm just like, yeah, well, let's see it. Let's just see it play out. I don't have any hot takes here. But the Steelers are 4-2 on the back of Justin Fields playing better than he did in Chicago, generally taking care of the ball, though that was worse the last couple weeks, but because the defense has been fantastic for Pittsburgh overall.
Yeah. And that's what makes it interesting, because you don't need Russell Wilson to be incredible. The defense has been playing lights out. Now, I think the big concern is that, that offensive line has been bad. And it is possible that gets worse with Russell Wilson back there because he's not able to do what Fields is. I also still don't think Fields particularly makes an offensive line look good at the moment. So as bad as it looks, part of that might be Fields. And yeah, I'm not like in a play where Broderick Jones thinks it's a run instead of a pass. Fields is able to turn that into a good play, right? But that's not most of the plays. Most of the plays are different. And I think the overall effect of Justin Fields on the offensive line is probably still negative. So if Wilson can improve that, it could be better.
The one caveat here, because we cite Russell Wilson as a great downfield thrower. You've mentioned many times astutely, the new league that's trying to take away those plays is taking away Russ's biggest strength. So you get into check down world, you get into maybe not playing to his strengths. And look, he's been an uncomfortable watch the last 2 years, whether it was with Nathaniel Hackett or with Sean Payton. Again, I'm not saying Russ is great, but he at least has had greatness in him. So maybe you're trying to, get some of that out of him to upgrade that offense in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
The other news that we have to touch on is Giants left tackle Andrew Thomas, apparently out for the season now. The offensive line has been much better overall, but he's been the one guy that's been really consistent over these last few years. Had a few rough reps last week in particular, but he's going to have foot surgery, expected to miss the rest of the year.
Yeah, massive blow for them. He's their best player in the offensive line. He's also the most indispensable because they don't have anybody even remotely close to that level as a backup. He's not having his best season so far, but that's a huge blow. And he's now missed quite a lot of games since sort of breaking out, becoming great, being an all-pro. He's missed a lot of time now. So massive blow for him, blow for the Giants, just a bad situation all around.
All right, man, we're going to get to we're going to get to Ronde Barber here soon in a couple of minutes. I didn't get confirmation that we have him, but it doesn't matter because I got to tell you about our friends over at Manscaped, bringing you this episode, the global leader in men's lifestyle and grooming, introducing Manscaped's newest innovation. It's the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver, the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of a professional shave right into your home. So whether you're after that daily, silky smooth finish or prefer to maintain a rugged 5 o'clock shadow, like I do, Sam. Rugged. 5 o'clock shadow.
That's a rugged 5 o'clock shadow.
That's how you describe me at all times. The Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is your go-to for precision and style every single time. So I love the flexibility here of the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver. Head over to manscaped.com. Join over the 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using the code MIKE20 for 20% off plus free shipping, MIC20. So what makes the Chairman Pro stand out? It's all about the versatility, the precision. Comes with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, and you have skin-safe 4-blade foil for that close, smooth shave when you're looking to go completely clean. So get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. You get 20% off plus free shipping with the code MIKE20, MIC20, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code MIKE20 at manscaped.com. Are you gonna lobby here for the dome shaver?
I've been lobbying. I'm trying to get I need to get confirmation of whether we can give away, because they sent me one of these things, right? But my need for a face shaving device is limited. Whereas
Are you gonna ask Ronde what he uses? You guys gonna?
I don't know what the etiquette. I haven't been bald long enough to know what the etiquette is amongst bald people. Can you just say, hey, as a guy who doesn't have hair like me, I don't know. I don't know if you can just break that out.
Ronde's been bald for a while, so I feel like you can, break the ice.
Right. It's not like it's new to him,
Yeah.
He knows.
It's new to you.
Yeah.
So you're within the last couple of days, right?
Last day or two.
Yeah,
yesterday.
John Middlecoff.
Yeah.
Former scout. I think he does his own podcast. Is it under Colin Cowherd or whatever?
Yeah, the volume.
I clicked on one of his videos the other day on the Robert Saleh firing, and it was great because he was like, here's my opinion, blah, blah, blah. He goes, sad day for the bald community. However, blah, blah, and then gives analysis.
Yeah, it was a real blow to us.
It was, so I think you and John should, get together. I think there's a community that you are not tapping into enough.
I haven't tapped into it at all yet.
So to our friends over at Manscaped, please send the
dome shaver
Sam's way.
Need the
and then
dome.
he will give a ringing endorsement.
Oh, hell yeah.
Ringing endorsement. Let's bring in Ronde. Welcome to the show. Welcome, Ronde. How's it going, man?
Good. Straight razor, by the way, if you're wondering.
It's awkward that you can hear all of that stuff. We're not talking behind your back.
Right. For the last 30 years. I've been bald since I was 21, man. It went quick.
That just seems, the straight razor always seemed dangerous to me. I need one of those, the foil handheld things.
Well, it took some practice.
Yeah.
It was not always a clean cut. So maybe I do need a manscape. Maybe I need a manscape when I was 21 years old. But
I know, too late to help you along the way. Now you could jump in now, though. We got
Right.
discount codes.
If Sam gets a dome shaver, we'll try to send one your way as well. You can test it out.
I love it. I love it.
Our listeners helped us with the intro here. So they said Ronde's intro will be long. We have Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champ, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team All-Pro, which is kind of, those are weird second-team All-Pros, but 5-time Pro Bowler, NFL All-Decade Team of the 2000s, and children's book author. Did we get enough of the accolades here for you?
You know what? For all the young fans out there, they could care less about everything you said before children's books author. Because every kid that I know that's, I don't know, let's say like 18 to 30, they always come up to me and say, they're kids to me at 30, but they come up to me and say, hey man, I read your books when I was younger. And I'm like, you're not doing me any favors making me feel like I'm old. Because we wrote those when we were 26 years old or something. And if they're reading them at that age. So, but they were good for us. We loved it. Children's book author was never something I thought I would be, but once I was so glad that we did it.
That's like George Foreman being just known for a grill, right? Oh, he's the grill guy. That's all he did was the grill.
Yeah. You know what? Fame, they say, and this is very true. Fame is impossibly fleeting. You forget everything you do at some point, and you're just what you are. So it's got to be children's book author. I'm down with that.
That's scary because, me and Steve are not as young as we used to be. We make all these references to, players like Ronde Barber, and it occurs to you how few people listening to us actually have any idea who half the players we reference even are. The thing is, I feel like you'd be perfect for today's NFL. The way the game is going, certainly this year, suddenly we're seeing, all these do-it-all defensive backs in particular front and center. These guys that are able to play the run, drop into coverage, play inside, play outside. Like, you're tailor-made for today's NFL.
Well, that's it. That evolution's probably started when I was playing at the end of my career. I mean, the position that I quote unquote revolutionized, everybody likes to put that label on me. That started like in the early 2000s, but I played up till 2012. So, I mean, there's some contemporaries of mine that were first, second year players that are still playing now at that position. And I think some of the influence rubs off. But in the early 2000s, the need for what I did started to emerge because all this 11 personnel, we're going to put your third corner in the game, and then we're going to try to run the football. That guy's not normally a blitzer. Well, we turned me into a blitzer. It wasn't just a guy that was out there covering. That's commonplace now. How many Pro Bowls? I said 5 Pro Bowls. If when I was playing, they were voting Pro Bowl nickelbacks to the Pro Bowl, I probably would have had 15 Pro Bowls because the position has just gained so much relevance in today's football. So I don't disagree with you. You can keep lauding my exploits all you want. I mean,
What are you seeing from today's NFL defensively? I think there's a lot of talk about it's too high, but it's not necessarily the coverages. It's the way they're being disguised. High level, what are you seeing from just today's defenses across the league?
It's that, there's a lot of subterfuge that goes into today's defensive play calling. It's unique. I'll give it that. But at the end of the day, because when I look at film now, I kind of try to dumb it down to my level when I was playing. It's 3 deep, it's 2 deep, it's quarters. There's fire zones, there's man zones, and there's really nothing else. I mean, you can change fronts. You can change the look of the structure of the defense before the snap, but at some point, 2 seconds into the play, it's got to reveal what it is, and it's ultimately the same stuff. Now, what's different is that there's different bodies doing the same roles that I did back in the day. So, you'll see defensive ends that are actually flat defenders in cover 2, or defensive ends that are outside linebackers, if you will, edge players that are hook droppers in 3 deep, 4 under. And the whole goal is to muddle up the look for the quarterback and for the offense. And it's fun to watch, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, there's only so many different coverages you can run, right? There's only so many different ways you can look at it. I'd say the biggest thing is the prevalence of these zero blitzes. You know, when Monty Kiffin was our D coordinator, we called zero, we called it bonsai. It was rare. I mean, maybe 2 or 3, 4 times a game. Now it shows up, you know, first and second down, in normal down and distance situations, on the 30-yard line, on the minus 30-yard line. So I think play callers have evolved in that way, but, defense is defense. It's all about hustling and hitting and running to the ball. When I look at Chicago Bears, they don't do anything special. They just run like hell, have a good tackling secondary, and they're winning.
So is that sort of prevalence of these unusual body type players doing a hybrid type of role, is that how Brian Flores is having such amazing success right now? Because he's got this hex on the Shanahan offense. He's made Brock Purdy look lost. He's made CJ Stroud look lost. And then you're like, well, maybe Aaron Rodgers, guy that's seen everything, maybe he'll be able to diagnose what he's seeing and combat it. And nope, Rodgers, same thing. Like airmails and interception. How is Flores getting this done, given what you said? Like, defense is defense. We've seen it all before. It's just packaged differently.
Right. I would love to be able to take credit for what I'm getting ready to say, but I read this somewhere because I was over in London when they played that Jets game. I was doing some stuff for the NFL, and as I was just studying up, looking at Flores, and I'm very familiar with Brian. I know him from covering him when I was doing games. But someone said his defense is position agnostic. And I was like, man, what a great definition for what Brian Flores does, because any player, like a defensive lineman could be a damn safety in his defense, right? His safeties are pressure guys or hook droppers or edge players, or it doesn't matter. They're fun to watch because you just don't know who's going to show up at any particular position. And so it's like organized chaos. And I don't know how he's gotten his guys to buy into this, or to teach all of 11 guys are on the field, basically all 11 positions. I mean, maybe the D tackles are the only 2 that don't stand up and end up at different parts on the field. But when you watch, the players buy into his scheme, you can tell that they're loving it. Josh Metellus, right? The safety / linebacker / edge guy. I mean, he plays everywhere on the field, and it's no wonder why, like, a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who's seen everything, is dropping back and like, oh my God, where the hell do I throw this football? I don't know. The guy that I thought was going to be in the middle of the field is now rushing the passer. The guy that I thought was going to be rushing the passer is now, a guy in the flat. Like, it's so confusing to figure out how he does it, but it's a pretty well-oiled machine, man. And he's got those guys flying around and having fun. It looks like they're having fun doing it. So he's found his niche, and they love it. It's great defense, I think.
It's interesting to me, too, because this isn't exactly what he was doing in Miami. It's not what he was doing in New England. Like, he's really developed this in Minnesota. Last year it evolved, and then this year, it's taken another step. So it's he continues to change, right? Because we always talk about people having their system. Flores is just changing his system every single year.
Right. Usually these things evolve because you're looking for different ways to impact the quarterback. And if you don't have dominant edge players, who was their guy that went to Houston? Danielle Hunter. Who was a guy you could just put down 4 down linemen, put him on the edge and say, go win, and he would win. They've had those type of players over the years. They don't really have that right now. Jonathan Greenard from Houston has got 5 sacks, I think, or at least he did prior to that game. Pat Jones having a career year, but they're not dynamic edge guys that can just go win here and there any particular play. So you manufacture it. So you create defenses that cause confusion and manufacture rush that way. And they do a lot of that, what do you call it? The simulated rushes where, it looks like a linebacker's inserting, but it's really only a 4-man rush. You're doing that to try to create pressure. And I think he's done a good job using the personnel to do that. And I think good D coordinators evolve and find ways to create pressure without, just as traditional 4-man rushes.
So Flores has been extremely innovative. And then one of the things that has changed in the league since you retired, Ronde, is the innovation on offense and the prevalence of running quarterbacks, running quarterbacks as part of the design running game. So I want to talk a little Bucks Ravens in their matchup this week. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry in the same backfield. It's been as advertised, at least since week 1. How can the Bucks slow down that duo and really this entire Ravens offense?
One way, don't let them rush for 200 yards, because if they rush for 200 yards, you're winning. Like, obviously, I was studying up on the Ravens prior to this week because, I just like to be informed when I start talking about my Bucks. I still call them my Bucks, even though I haven't played there in 13 years.
You're a Bucks legend. They are your Bucks, yes.
They're still my Bucks. My name's still on the stadium, dude. 274 yards versus Dallas, 271 rushing yards versus Buffalo. Like, what they've created out of that offense is well, let me go back, because you mentioned running quarterbacks. So that evolution has definitely evolved. I mean, there was maybe a handful of them when I was playing, but when what happened in college is now in the pros. That's translated all the way back down to like middle school and high school, where that player is the guy with the ball all the time now in football across all levels. And now that it's in the NFL, defenses have had to adjust to deal with rushing quarterbacks. Guys that obviously like Lamar, Jaden Daniels now, watched him week 1 against the Bucks. It's a problem, right? We all know that it's a problem. But you add into the mix a guy like Derrick Henry, who leads the league in everything, rushing wise, touchdown, yards, et cetera, et cetera. You get this dynamic that says, what I normally do on defense, I have to go away from and find ways just to stop these two guys, right? Not to mention Zay Flowers, not to mention the tight end, not to mention anybody else that may or may not get the ball. But you got to say, those guys have to beat us. Lamar and Derrick Henry can't beat us, because if they go off, it's a shootout, and Baker Mayfield and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and all those guys got to score a bunch of points, which could happen. Bucks have had the ability to do that this year. But if you're Todd Bowles and you're scheming up this game, you're stopping those two guys. And thankfully for Tampa, from my perspective, thankfully for Tampa, they run a lot of a loaded box stuff. They run a lot of 3 deep. They put a lot of pressure on their corners. They have a great safety in Antoine Winfield. They have the ability to find ways to stop this run game. And I look forward to seeing them try to do it. I think it's going to be a fun game, but nobody else has done it. The 274, 271 games were followed up by 175 and 176. So if they get over 175 yards rushing, the Ravens are going to win. They've won 4 in a row, just bludgeoning people in the run game. It's pretty impressive.
Ronde, I know you've been studying these rookie wide receivers, especially some of those high-end first-rounders. What are you seeing from some of the rookies at wideout so far?
Yeah, I got doing a little hit today on 33rd team for those at least the 3 guys at the top: Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and Neighbors. All different, right? I did a kind of a mock-up on these guys before the draft. And I came out thinking that Dunze was this combat catch receiver. He wants people close to him because he's bigger, he's stronger, he's got phenomenal hands. He's shown that. I mean, his quarterback was a little erratic at the beginning of the year. Caleb has come on, because I was in London last week as well and watched him just throw 4 touchdown passes and look like a 2 or 3 year vet. So I think his touches will go up as they find ways to utilize him. But he's like their 4th leading receiver. Marvin, with the nature of his quarterback, and Kyler Murray, he's more of a home run guy. He leads of all the rookies. I think he has the highest yards per catch. Most of those are his, Kyler getting out of the pocket, doing pirouettes or whatever, and then making monster throws down the field to Marvin. He's hurt, I think, this week, but he's just kind of a long guy. He's got some limitations, I think, because he drops the ball sometimes, and I'm like, how the hell did he drop the ball? Like, his first ever attempt at a catch was the worst type of batted down ball you would ever see. But he is still a special player. But the best one to me is Neighbors. He's ridiculous. They use him in so many different ways, in the slot, out of the backfield. I think Marvin's got 35 targets. Neighbors has 52 in that Giants offense, and that's not including the 2 games he missed. He's missed 2 games. He already has 52 targets on the year, and he's special. He does a little bit of everything, and they find ways, they manufacture ways to get him the ball specifically. He is by far the highest targeted guy of this rookie class. I think he looks like the most dynamic of all of them. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, a lot of that depends on their quarterback, but it's a good group this year.
It's obviously super early, and we're dealing with really small sample sizes with all these guys. But do you think that Marvin Harrison still has that kind of special ability? When we were at draft time, we were like, any one of these 3 guys would be the best wide receiver in most draft classes. And even though there were definitely a lot of people that had Neighbors as wide receiver 1, most people still thought Marvin Harrison is the cleanest, the best prospect of this group and the best for years. And yet he's the one where through the first sort of 6 weeks, it's like, hasn't quite looked the same.
Right. I think so. To me, he's got the pedigree, of course, right? So a lot of the hype around Marvin Harrison Jr. comes because his dad's a Hall of Famer and was impossible to cover. Trust me, I know. He is, I think, the best kind of pure wide receiver in terms of he's imminently looking like he can go by you. That's as a corner, if you're off or on the line of scrimmage, the threat of him going by you is real. Like you feel it. You see it when he's on his tape now. Corners are out there and they just know that my hips have to be open maybe a yard or 2 quicker. If I get down the field, he's got the length to make the play over me. What I see is he's not a natural catcher of the football. He's got good hands, but it's just not natural. He won't make that circus catch like Malik Neighbors will and has done. It won't make the really great combat catch like Rome Odunze has done already. But to me, as he grows and as he gets more familiar with kind of how to play the game at this level and at this speed, he'll find a way to utilize his skill set. He's longer and he's faster than any of the other 2 guys, and he's got a quarterback that sometimes is off schedule. That's the danger with Marvin Harrison Jr. from a defensive perspective. The off schedule plays, the ones where he's running around and Marvin Harrison gets free, are the ones where you've seen the big plays so far in his career. And I think that's always going to be a threat with him when he has that quarterback working with him. But I mean, we're like comparing apples to oranges here. They're both juicy and they both taste great. I don't think that I would give any kind of negative to Marvin Harrison's start to his career. I mean, he's a rookie. He'll get better. He's a heck of a talent, heck of a prospect.
Love it. Yeah, appreciate it, Ronde. This has been great. Enjoy having you on the show, and we'll have to do it again sometime. Great talking ball with you, man.
I'm available. I'm not doing much these days. Weather's getting nice here after the storms in Milton and Helene, and be sitting around watching ball. That's what I do.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely do it again then.
Yep. Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
Ronde.
Thanks, Ronde.
That was great. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I like that. I think you definitely have the justification for being something of a homer if your name is literally on the stadium.
Oh yeah, of course.
I think that's a good qualifying.
You're allowed to do
benchmark.
That. One thing he said that was really interesting there is he called Marvin Harrison longer and faster.
Yeah.
Than the other 2. The other piece that was added there was him talking about Kyler Murray playing off schedule. I wonder, for the polished receiver that Marvin Harrison Jr. is, I wonder if that does work against his production, right? Like in a vacuum, you wouldn't say, I would rather have Daniel Jones than Kyler Murray. But for a Marvin Harrison Jr. as a technician who's just going to get open within structure, and Daniel Jones who's going to play within structure more, get the ball to you on time, I wonder if that would actually help Marvin Harrison Jr.'s production relative to where it is right now.
It's also so it's sort of just such a product of this modern world of instant, gratification where we expect the guy to be good, not just good. Like if you were billed as a great receiver, you need to be a Pro Bowl caliber player by week 3. Otherwise, what's going on here? Like, why is this so disappointing? Like there are Hall of Fame wide receivers that had relatively slow starts to their career. It took them a year to get going. Like if Marvin Harrison is an All-Pro next year, it's it's still a pretty good pick.
I feel like we always have to remind people of that. Remember Christian Watson did absolutely nothing until week 9 or 10, and then all of a sudden it was like 10 touchdowns in 7 weeks or whatever it was down the stretch. It was crazy. And one of our listeners predicted a second half breakout from Christian Watson that year. Everyone developing at different times. Caleb Williams coming off his best 2 games kind of doesn't make you forget the beginning of the season, but it's like, hey, if a corner has been turned here, then Caleb Williams is getting to where he's supposed to be a lot quicker. So, always interesting watching the rookies and how they progress. So the reason why we started the Wednesday show a couple of years back is so that we could talk long form about stuff, right? We didn't want to feel rushed on a Monday, or we didn't want to go
2.5
hours
Yeah.
on a Monday or a Thursday. So something would come up on a Monday, and it's like, we got to talk about this Wednesday. So one of those things is revisiting this Deshaun Watson trade. And look, we did spend plenty of time on it on Monday. But going back to the actual Deshaun Watson trade before the 2022 NFL season and breaking it down. And you went down, I know you went back and looked at what did the Browns give up from a draft pick perspective? What did those picks become? What could they have become? But I want to just set this up with what was going on in the NFL at that time. In that 2020 to 22 range, the entire NFL was going all in on offense. They were making monster moves at quarterback. We had seen Tom Brady in 2020 sign as a free agent with the Bucs and win a Super Bowl. We saw Matthew Stafford the following year. The Rams traded for him, and they won a Super Bowl. The Rams at the time had Jared Goff, who right now is running one of the best offenses in the league, if not the best offense in the league. But at that time, the Rams were like, I know this guy went to a Super Bowl. I know he's a good quarterback. We want better. The entire NFL was trying to get a top 8 caliber quarterback. And if they couldn't get that guy, and they had a rookie quarterback or rookie contract quarterback, they would go get an elite receiver. And we saw A.J. Brown traded for in the 2022 NFL draft by the Eagles. We saw Tyreek Hill traded for in 2022. So the entire league was doing this, right? Upgrade at quarterback, and if you couldn't get the upgraded quarterback, go get the receiver. Russell Wilson trade, Aaron Rodgers trade rumors, which didn't come through until after the 22 season. This was the state of the league at the time. So I just want to lay that groundwork for why the Deshaun Watson trade happened. Because the Browns they were heading into year 5 of Baker Mayfield. Year 4, we talked a lot on this show. He had the shoulder injury. It was his left shoulder. He did it in week 2. He was not the same quarterback for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So to that point, really quick, 4 years of Baker Mayfield. It went good, bad, good in 2020. Playoff appearance, beat the Steelers. 2021, bad. So they felt like they had this roller coaster quarterback, mid-level quarterback. Browns wanted to make a big move and go get Deshaun Watson. And I haven't discussed any of the off-field and the fact that Watson had been suspended for the whole 21 season. So that's a little bit of the background for how we got here.
Yeah, and the good in the second good year that Baker had was not just good, it was really good by the end. It was basically the year that Jordan Love had last season, where it started off pretty good, and then by mid-season, a switch flipped, and he became one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. That's what Baker had the year before he hurt his shoulder. And there was talk, that offseason, does he get the contract going into that year based off the year he just had? And they're like, no, we'll wait. He goes into this year, hurts his shoulder in week 2, aggravates it as the year goes on, gets progressively worse. And then by the end of that year, they decide, you know what, we're going to go in a different direction. We're going to cut bait on Baker and go get our star.
So what was Watson at the time as a football player? In 2020, the Texans were 4-12. They were terrible. He was good. He was coming off of his best season statistically, whether you're using PFF or any other advanced metric or any traditional metric. Watson was a good quarterback. Up until that point, the Texans weren't a great team. He produced well. He was a very good quarterback, and it looked like he had taken a step to become an elite quarterback while the entire team crumbled around him. That was 2020. End of the season, all of the allegations come against him. He sits on the Texans roster the entire 2021 season as a lot of this stuff's getting sorted out. It was a weird world where the NFL wasn't suspending him, but the Texans weren't playing him, and he just sat.
Yep.
And then before the 2022 season, They hand down a 12-game suspension, and the Browns are in the running to trade for him. I believe the Falcons were involved. The Saints were involved.
But they traded for him before the suspension.
Before the suspension, right? Before the suspension was announced, and he made his debut against the Texans. You knew that after the fact because you knew he was already on the Browns. But they traded for him, suspension unknown, and competing with the Falcons, competing with the Saints. The Browns were reported to be out of the running, and then within a day or two, they were back in. And they were back in because they went fully guaranteed for the 4 years.
Yeah, so that's another element of the desperation to make the move in the first place, right? There are a bunch of hallmarks that show you how desperate they were. Number one, the report you just mentioned that they were behind. They were out. The Falcons were expected to get him. The Saints were expected to get him. The Browns were supposedly done. They'd kicked the tires. They'd investigated. They tried to make it happen, and they were behind. They were out. The fact that it went from that to they were the team, that's number one. The fact that how much they traded to get him is number two. The contract that they gave him, which is still basically seen as an outlier throughout the NFL. Normally, the next big quarterback contract is kind of used as the benchmark for the one after that. From the outset, the rest of the NFL was like, what the hell is this contract? This doesn't count. It's an outlier. It's a freak contract. This is not precedent, right? Nobody else has used this Deshaun Watson contract as precedent to get the next 5-6 year fully guaranteed contract. The league has seen this as the act of a desperate team from day one. And then the third point, that they didn't know what the suspension was going to be when they traded for him. They knew something was coming down the line. It could have been a year. It could have been multiple years. I mean, I'm sure they had feelers out with the NFL and were sort of, poking around, trying to get an idea. But they traded for this guy knowing that something was coming in terms of suspension, but not knowing how long, having already seen him sitting on the sideline for a whole year. So a whole bunch of things basically show you how desperate a move this was for Cleveland.
And the one last thing I just want to add about the context of the league at that point. We've been talking a lot about top 8 quarterbacks on the show for a while. We used to call it the Matt Ryan inflection point, right? Matt Ryan is like QB 8 in the NFL, and if you're above Matt Ryan, you're just giving yourself a much better chance to win a Super Bowl. The previous 10 to 12 years in the league at this point, Tom Brady had 4 Super Bowl wins. Patrick Mahomes had a Super Bowl win, was on the cusp of others. Peyton Manning had one, even though he wasn't great at the time. But it was all the elite quarterbacks had the best options, the best opportunities. Or you had Matt Ryan in his MVP caliber season going. He's the inflection point. Or you had a rookie contract quarterback who made a Super Bowl type of run. Jimmy Garoppolo made it to the Super Bowl. Jared Goff made it to the Super Bowl. This is what the league was. You either had a top 8 quarterback who is capable of going on the run, a Matthew Stafford, or you had a rookie contract quarterback, or you had the random outliers. Hey, Carson Wentz was a rookie contract quarterback. He gets hurt. Nick Foles goes on an incredible run. Like, you had a couple outliers in there. And previous to that, you'd get like a random Super Bowl run by Joe Flacco or Eli Manning. But for the most part of the last 20 to 30 years in the NFL, if not more, elite quarterbacks, top 8 type of quarterbacks give you a better shot. So that's all that to say, that's like, I think, the football reasons why they went and made this Deshaun Watson trade. They said, he's an upgrade over Baker Mayfield. We're going to build this good roster around him and go make a run.
Yep.
And then what happened?
It was a disaster. Deshaun Watson has been pretty universally terrible from that point on.
Yeah.
And they could have had much better.
And I want to try, I don't want to completely separate the football from the off field. I mean, clearly, like, 2 things have changed since the last time we've seen Deshaun Watson play football well, right? Like, he's had all of these allegations, and there's a chance that all of that happening has just coincided with him being bad at football as well, all at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say this properly here, right? Like, everything fell apart for Watson since that point. So I'm trying to isolate what the Browns were probably thinking from a football standpoint, and then also what they, pushed aside from an off-field perspective to go and make this football move. So that's that. Now,
just one really interesting element of all this, the last good year, the year before Baker hurt his shoulder. You know where he ranked in PFF grade?
In 2020?
Yeah.
8th?
Eighth.
Yeah.
The inflection point.
He was at the inflection point.
That's the thing, right?
He
was literally at the inflection point.
Let me describe the inflection point, though, because when we're talking rankings, right? And when I say a top 8 quarterback, that doesn't literally mean the guy is going to rank in the top 8 every single year. Mm-hmm. It just means if you take a 5-year sample, he'll probably be in the top 8, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, like most of the time. Go look at Matt Ryan's career, right? He is, in his era, if you added it all up by any metric, passer rating, QBR, PFF grade, he's got 6, 7, 8, 9. He's in that range, right? In all of those metrics, probably in his era. And and there were some years where he was below that. And there was one year where he was an MVP and, met Kyle Shanahan, was in year 2 of Shanahan's system, and they had all the playmakers and they destroyed the league. So Baker only had 1 year in that. But, his rookie year, he was 10th, I think. His third year, he was 8th. Like, he was on the cusp of being that guy, but he was just so inconsistent, right? When they gave him OBJ, he got worse. When the old line fell apart a little bit, he got worse. Like, he was a little circumstantial with some of his production.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to me that, that in the inflection point where it's like, do we have the guy? Do we not have the guy? Baker is literally on the line at the point where they're making the decisions effectively, and they chose to go away from him and instead embraced Deshaun Watson. And from that point on, it's been an unmitigated train wreck.
Mohal is asking again, like, can we rewind the tape and look at our takes at the time? What do you think your take was at the time? You've always been a Baker defender in that the Browns should have given him another chance.
Yeah. Well, no, so not even that. Yes, look, I think going away, I think Baker Mayfield got punished for Baker Mayfield being gritty and playing through a shoulder injury that he should have been protected from. Somebody out there, Baker is the type of player. Like, think of what he did in his college career, what he did to get to that point. This is a guy who was a walk-on multiple times, who battled against the odds, who is the classic Rocky underdog, right? That guy is going to stick his face in a fan anytime it's an option. And if that's not the best thing for him, somebody else is responsible for protecting him, right? For holding him back from damaging himself. Baker went out there and tried to play through a busted shoulder for an entire season. And very early on, it was clear that that wasn't going to work, right? Or at the very minimum, that it did not reflect who he was as a quarterback. We saw that the year before. He was vastly better in that season. He was a top 10 quarterback and ascending. And he plays through that shoulder injury, trying to do the team good. And the team reacted to that by saying, thanks for that. Now we're going to go in a different direction. We're not even going to use it as a bargaining tool to knock your number down. We're just going to get rid of you. I think that's bullshit. I think that's a crappy way of dealing with things, even in a business like the NFL, where, personal sort of feelings often go to the side and it's a business decision. I think that was a really crappy way of handling the situation. I think they did Baker Mayfield dirty, and they backed that up by then going after a guy with all kinds of moral question marks around him. The Cleveland Browns do not come out of this well, even independent of the fact that it's been an unmitigated disaster on the field.
And then I'll try to go back and get into headspace that I would have been in at the time when this move was made. And I have to separate the football from the off-field just for the sake. The football discussion, I have been firmly in the camp of you want a top 8 quarterback. And you make the moves to go do that so that you can make a run. If you don't have a top 8 quarterback, you probably need a Kyle Shanahan, right? You probably need a guy that's going to be a consistent offense elevator who can bring a Jimmy Garoppolo to the Super Bowl and bring a rookie Brock Purdy and a year 2 Brock Purdy on the cusp of a Super Bowl. Now, again, I think Brock Purdy's evolving into a top 8 quarterback, but I don't know that he definitely was at the time. You know what I mean? So I probably would have said, you take this chance from a football perspective to go get the quarterback. And I probably would have said the same thing about Denver going to get Russell Wilson. I had my concerns about how well Russell Wilson was playing at that time, which is different from Watson, right? The last time we had seen Watson, he had played well. We just hadn't seen him in over a year. And with Russell Wilson, we hadn't seen him play good football in about a year and a half, right? So I say go make that move. For the Jets, I probably say go make that move for Aaron Rodgers, right? Now, I might look stupid on all of those moves, at this point. But I always ask, what's the alternative? What's the alternative at quarterback? The Browns had the best alternative there. The Broncos did not. They had this revolving door of mediocre quarterbacks. They couldn't get over the hump.
Yeah.
The Jets have obviously had this revolving door of subpar quarterbacks. So you have to take these chances because the alternative is doing the same thing. The Browns were the only team who had at least a better alternative than these other teams that made these big moves for quarterbacks.
That's why this is so much worse. I actually don't think you should separate the football from the non-football in terms of Deshaun Watson because that's part of the equation, right?
Listen, just to be clear, I'm not separating it as part of the decision. Like if I'm in the building in Cleveland, obviously that's a massive part of the decision. I'm talking about in a vacuum to go from previously mid-tier quarterback to previously top 8 quarterback. I like that move in isolation, in football terms only, before we have the discussion of who this dude is and what's going on.
So
just to be clear.
There's a blue sky meeting somewhere in the Cleveland Browns front office, right, where they say, hey, look, Baker Mayfield right now is sitting at this Matt Ryan inflection point. Let's assume they talk in our parlance, right? Baker Mayfield last year, he was at the inflection point. This year, obviously, things went bad with the shoulder injury. We don't think he's the guy, right? We think he's going to be below the inflection point for his entire career. Let's go get someone above it, right? And you're like, okay, cool. Good call. I like your thinking. I like the cut of your jib, sir. Who are the names? Give me some names. Who's available? Well, there's one name, and he's got 23 accusations of sexual assault against him right now. His name's Deshaun Watson. He's fresh. He's been sitting on the sideline for a year. Let's go get him, right? If that's the solution, I think fairly clearly you go, okay, maybe we were too hasty with Baker. Maybe he can be above the inflection point. Maybe we could just make the inflection point work. It's not that bad, right? Very quickly, like as soon as you identify who's available and the answer is a one-name list and the one name is that, I think you have to say, okay, we need to change tack here. And instead, they went, no, let's go for it. And let's go all in. Let's go nuts. And then when you get him in the building, just start talking about how confident you are in him as a person. You know, I have a ton of faith in Deshaun Watson as a human being and as a quarterback. That was like the opening press conference was like the PR people had one line. Just repeat this. Whatever the question is, circle back to this. That's your line. Then we'll be good. You know? So the whole thing was...
all of that was pretty bad from the start.
The whole thing was an amoral exercise in upgrading a quarterback, and they didn't upgrade a quarterback. That's where we are with this.
And now, can you go through the list? Because you tweeted this out last week. Can you go through what they gave up? And then what it
first of all, it's a complicated trade because a lot of those picks that were given to Houston were subsequently traded on, traded down, traded whatever. You didn't end up, it wasn't like for like, you know what I mean? We don't get sometimes you're like, oh, the final pick in the trade is, and now we can see what it was. It's awkward when you do that. Effectively, what the Browns did was give up 3 consecutive first-round picks, 2022, 23, and 24. They gave up a 4th rounder in 2022, a 3rd rounder in 2023, and a 4th rounder in 2024.
But
Houston,
they got a 6 back in 2024.
They did. Somehow they managed to convince Houston to give him a 6th rounder back in 2022. As if that took all suddenly it's a win. You know, we were right on the line with the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, and then we got that 6 back in it. It's a big W for us. Anyway. So I decided to look at it. Okay, forget what they ended up trading at 2 and 2 and 2. If you just took those picks, what could you make out of this deal, right? So I looked at, okay, what if you kept Baker Mayfield and then you had the player that was simply drafted at that pick, right? Forget what you would have done. This is just who got selected at that pick. Jordan Davis, the no tackle for the Eagles. Logan Bruss, remember he was the guy that the Rams targeted as we only have a pick in
pick 103, and he's just made his NFL debut this year after injuries and subpar performance. But
right. So he's that guy. Jahmyr Gibbs, Jalen Hyatt, the speedster that the Giants took, who everyone loved. Brian Thomas, the player who looks like a superstar speedster, and then tight end Cade Stover. So that's who was selected at that draft pick. But then I was like, okay, but that's, you wouldn't have selected those picks as the Browns. I was like, let's go best player available with an idea of what Cleveland would do, right? I.e., they wouldn't just take 6 linemen, presumably. So the best player available, factoring in Cleveland's roster, is all-pro Kyle Hamilton, high-level right tackle Zach Tom / versatile offensive lineman, Minnesota's wide receiver number 2, Jordan Addison. Your best player at the Steelers, Nick Herbig.
Yes.
Brian Thomas Jr. is still the best player at that spot. And then running back Braylon Allen, who the Jets have got this year, is their running back 2 behind Breece Hall. So either you could have Deshaun Watson playing like ass, or Baker Mayfield and that collection of players is what the Browns essentially traded.
It certainly looks bad in hindsight when you look at that.
Yeah.
In addition to, like, if Watson was playing mid-tier football and the Browns were just not getting over the hump, they were just a 8-9, 9-8 type of team with Watson playing just mediocre football, you'd say, hey, we might question this thing.
If Watson was playing as well as Baker Mayfield is playing right now, it would still look ridiculous, because the answer is Deshaun Watson or Baker Mayfield playing at the same level and this collection of all pros.
Yeah, that's why having a slew of picks is always fun. Like that first option, you didn't hit on every pick, right? Jalen Hyatt hasn't done anything. Logan Bruss hasn't done anything. Right. We don't know much about Cade Stover yet.
Yeah.
But you would have a starting defensive tackle of that group. You have a starting defensive tackle in Jordan Davis who's solid, playmaking running back in Jahmyr Gibbs, and what looks like a high-end wide receiver in Brian Thomas Jr.,
right,
even if he's better than we thought at the time. Is Tyler telling us to wrap it up?
He is, yeah. Tyler's suffering through this at the moment.
Every time we say Browns, just imagine we're saying Steelers. Is that better? Imagine the Steelers did all this, Tyler, and it's not your favorite team. And then we don't have to rehash Monday. We took our time Monday to go through just how poorly the production has been, how poor the production has been on the Browns offense, their passing offense with Deshaun Watson at the helm. And perhaps worse in all of this is that Joe Flacco was sitting on the couch like we were last year, and he stepped in and made the offense look much better. Now, to Flacco's credit, he's doing the same thing in Indianapolis. Maybe he's just good now in his late 30s. And
reportedly, the Browns chose to sort of voluntarily move on from him, like let him walk away, specifically because they did not want to create the type of quarterback controversy that might exist if a guy who had outperformed the starter was sitting there behind him on the bench, which is, number one, it's self-defeating. Number two, it hasn't avoided that at all, because people are still like, I don't care how bad Jameis is, he can't be worse than this. Throw him out there. Like, it hasn't avoided the quarterback controversy.
Can we just touch the other side of this really quickly? Because you and I were very critical of the Texans for a little while. Nick Caserio takes over, and it seemed like they were just treading water for a couple of years. They didn't know what they were going to get from Watson yet. Right. And while they were treading water, they did not add any impact players to their team. I think the first impact player they really added was in 2022, Derek Stingley. And that was when they started to first get these draft picks from the Browns after they had traded Watson. Now the Texans looking fantastic right now. But here's what they ended up getting for Deshaun Watson. We've got running back Dameon Pierce, the great Tank Dell at wide receiver, Cade Stover, the tight end we already talked about, Kenyon Green, first-round guard, and then Will Anderson at the edge, linebacker Jabal Hill, cornerback Amari Lassiter, and safety Caden Bullock. Eyeballing that, Dell, call him a starter, Anderson, impact starter, Lassiter and Bullock, starters. So Kenyon Green's a starter. So they've got 5 starters. I'd say 4 of them are at least good or will be good, and I think Cade Stover might have starting potential at some point as well.
Even if you just limit it to the Will Anderson thing, right? The extra picks that the Texans got from Cleveland effectively armed them with the ammunition to be able to go big with that move, right? They already selected their quarterback, which frankly is the most important part of all this, right? They picked C.J. Stroud. That's the single most defining part of this entire thing so far.
Sure.
But they, at the same time, decided they got what we termed at the time greedy. They got greedy and decided, let's go get the best defensive player as well. They only had that capacity, really, because of these extra picks from Cleveland. This enabled them to get greedy or, want to have the best player as well and go get what looks like a guy that's going to be a superstar on the defensive side as well. This enabled that.
Based off this one, the Bryce Young trade, maybe the Russell Wilson trade, some of these trades, should Steve, third person here, should Steve reconsider previous concepts of go get the quarterback at all, go get the top 8 quarterback at all costs?
On the basis that none of them have worked out recently.
You know that it's risky, right? Like, it's high risk, high reward. The theory behind it is again, you're treading water if you don't have a quarterback, but is the alternative, and we've had a lot of listeners push this way and say, just do everything you can to build the roster. Do everything you can to build the roster. And in, say, like the 49ers case, let's be serious here. They got lucky because we could break down that Trey Lance trade, and that looks just as bad as far as results go, but they stumbled into Brock Purdy. But what makes the Niners great is that they've drafted so well around that, added all these impact players from George Kittle to Debo to Ayuk, make the Trent Williams trade, and it's such a good roster that, you just build that up and then, kind of hope you get lucky at quarterback.
I think what we've seen in the last few years is a real, I don't know if it's increased the power of it or if it's simply reminding people of the power of the supporting cast for the quarterback. Even really good quarterbacks cannot just wave a magic wand and fix everything, right? Like, they can definitely move the needle more than anything else out there. But like Rodgers can't just click his fingers and fix the Jets, right? Rodgers not able to step onto that team. And this is, again, where Tom Brady is just a single freak outlier. Tom Brady walks onto the Bucs and immediately they win a Super Bowl. And okay, they weren't terrible before with Jameis, but they were a mid-level.
They were 7-9.
Right.
I mean, things changed when Brady showed
They were
up.
a classic mid team, right? They were a bang slap in the middle, nothing. Brady walks in, click, bam, Super Bowl, right? That's freakish. That's not normal. Nobody else can do that. And everyone's chasing that, right? They're like, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Famer. We'll bring him in, click, fixed. Nope. We're still struggling. We're still grinding it out. It hasn't quite worked the same way. So you need to either be chasing, like literally a singular freak show quarterback, a guy like an all-time outlier when you're going after those moves, or you need to have the team that's definitely capable of going on that run almost independent of the quarterback. So like Russell Wilson, even at his peak, probably wasn't that guy where he was going to step on, click, fixed, we're going to the Super Bowl, and he was not that guy at the time when they traded for him. So that was, like I said, a desperation reach for a team that had Drew Lock at quarterback and then Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. And, this revolving door was like, God, come on, just end it. Do something. Go get a guy. Rodgers of the Jets is kind of the same thing, right? It's just like, God, just stop the treadmill. Just find an answer. I think that's what we're seeing. Like, these teams just get so desperate of having nobody that they're willing to throw whatever it takes at going after the guy. Whereas really the approach is probably, let's try and keep a good roster together, and then if we have a shot at a quarterback, take the shot. But don't manufacture the shot by throwing 4 first-round draft picks and everything else at putting yourself in that position. Just get yourself in as good a position as you can get, and then if you have if a quarterback in the first round slides into your remit, maybe go flip another first to go get him. But don't get desperate. That's really I think that's the lesson of the last 5-6 years at quarterback trades. Just don't get desperate.
Don't get desperate. I think we covered that pretty well. It is time for the people's favorite segment of the week. Favorite 2 segments. The people are asking about Shouty Shows and also my PrizePicks lineup. So look, they want to know. They want to know where I'm going this week with the lineup. They want to know if we can keep this 8 for 8 perfect record going. But let's start with our Shouty Show segment, and let's go. Let's just go with Shouty Show part number 1.
Yards per rush, dead last. Red zone offense, 30th. Total defense, 24th. Rushing defense, 25th. Scoring defense, 30th. Red zone, 30th. I mean, damn! There is nothing that they are doing that is right. So you can't stop the run. You can't run. You can't stop the pass. You can't pass. You can't block, okay? And you can't stop people from blocking you. You know who should be the person, Shay, that should be celebrating today, that should be the happiest man. He should be happier than the pig in mud. That's Derrick Henry. Because I know that he's running roughshod in Baltimore, right? He wanted to be in Dallas. Guess what? Had he gone to Dallas, it might have hurt his stock. They can't block for him. They can't block for him.
Legend. Stephen A. Legendary. Legendary reaction.
I hate it so much.
All I need is his old friend Skip throwing the jersey in the garbage again.
Do you think that, Shannon Sharpe is a Shouty Show type of person, but he is also a Hall of Fame tight end who knows football. Do you think it like, does he sit there watching this, knowing that Stephen A. doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to football? Does that grate, or does he just like, this is great, this is entertainment, this is what I'm here for?
Yeah, I mean, they know what they've signed up for. My favorite part is when Stephen A. gets all analytical, right?
Reading the numbers
He's got
that
the
somebody has
numbers.
supplied him with.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, again, I'm
Like
picture,
the meeting
I picture
was-
the production meetings.
The
right?
meeting was, I'm about to go off on the Cowboys, and somebody was then tasked with giving him rankings.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right? Like on Sunday night, Stephen A., what are we talking about tomorrow? Number 1, Cowboys suck. That's it. Like, that's the email that he returns. And then he's got, a personal assistant going through, and like, this will back up your points. And if you inflect your voice a little bit, it might add a little impact when you do that.
I hate that it
Here's
works.
a little red zone offense for you. Like Stephen A. sitting there grinding Cowboys tape like, man, that red zone offense just not doing it. Mike's not calling the plays, and nobody's getting open, and Dak's not seeing it in the red zone. No, he's just yelling out the red zone offense. Ranking.
I just hate that it works. It's like it's a pantomime. Like it's not real. It's fake, and it annoys me that it's successful because Stephen A. Smith does not have the football knowledge to be commenting on the NFL. He just doesn't, right? And it's not even just the NFL. He doesn't have the MMA knowledge either. But his pantomime bullshit is so successful that they put him in front of every audience because he's the thing that moves the needle. I hate that.
I think he had a baseball take a couple weeks ago. Like, literally, when was the last time Stephen A. Smith sat through a 2.5-hour baseball game?
Right.
When was the last time?
Has he ever?
And he like, Stephen A., I need your take on the Mets.
Yeah.
Let me know what you think about
Got
the
it.
Mets.
Don't worry about it. Got it covered.
I blame all of this on MTV and the Real World.
MTV.
I think the Real World, which was staged.
Yes.
I think the Real World, that show set us all back decades as humans. I think that started. And then you have stuff like Survivor, and you had like kind of like a whole new genre of reality shows that are just like staged mostly.
You know what it's like? So it's kind of like you've seen The Terminator, I assume.
Yeah.
Classic, right?
Yeah.
That we're headed inexorably towards right now with AI. But the moment where the software became self-aware and immediately just mashed the nuke button, right? At some point, like we've always known, there's that classic newspaper adage, if it bleeds, it leads. Like we've always known negativity and this kind of stuff sells. People engage with that. But at some point, the institution became self-aware and was like, well, hang on. In which case, why don't we just make everything shouty? Why don't we just amplify the noise? Like just whatever it is we're covering, let's just make it loud, obnoxious, and shouty because that's what people want. And now we just sell, like it just snowballs. That's what happened. Somewhere along the line, people like Skip Bayless and Stephen A. just were like, well, hang on. If this is the stuff that does well, why don't we just make this the whole shtick? And it worked, and I hate that.
Can I just tell you really quick? I don't want to go off the rails too much. I've told this story on the show before, but I don't remember when. It's probably a while ago. Do you know my first experience? Do you remember? I remember when I first realized that it was a Shouty show.
Yeah.
That what I was watching. When I was in college, the show Cold Pizza was on ESPN2, and they tried to make it like a Good Morning America type of like sports centric show. It was kind of cool. They brought in gadget people. They had fun little segments. Always had it on in the background during college. This was probably, say, 02. And then in 07, I just always had this on in the background. And all of a sudden, a guy named Skip Bayless is on there.
Yeah.
And they asked him a question. This is 07. The two best quarterbacks in the league at the time are Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. The question was, who would you rather have, Tom Brady or Peyton Manning? Do you know what his answer was? He says, I would rather have Vince Young or Jay Cutler because they're more clutch.
Got it.
And all of a sudden, like this caught my ear in the background. I was like, what am I watching?
Yeah.
And then I said, never again. And I turned it off.
Right. But the
And
problem
here
is,
we are 15 years later, and I'm listening to it.
The problem is 85% of people went in the opposite direction and went, this is gold. I got to keep watching this.
This is great. Got to hear
Yeah.
it. Tell me why Vince Young's better than Peyton Manning.
Right.
Tell me more. I need more.
So,
As do we.
speaking of Skip Bayless, I believe he's up next.
Number 2.
How in the name of Thomas Wade Landry does Mike McCarthy still have a job? I asked that question after last year's home playoff game in which we were the 2 seed playing these 7-seed Packers, the youngest team in the league, and the Packers had us down 27-0 before halftime. Jerry, how do you not fire McCarthy? It's because he's your best friend and maybe your only friend. Happy birthday, Jerry, 82. And I'm dying over here.
Oh, Skip. We set him up for that.
These are self-published hot takes now. He's
I was
just
going to
out
say,
here-
where are these coming from?
He's just out here like self-publishing, like Amazon. You know, I've written a book. I've self-published. Here's the link. Let's just Skip his own show now. Just Skip spewing Dallas Cowboys bullshit.
Imagine what's going on in his head. It's like, man, I'm off the air now, but the people need this. They need to know, like,
I owe this to my audience.
I'm sure every Dallas fan is sitting here watching us lose, watching the Cowboys lose 47-9. And instead of just lamenting their team and thinking about how they could fix it, and they're like, man, I just got to know what Skip thinks about this loss.
So this is also, though, where I struggle. This is why, again, I can't be a Shouty Show person, because I can't ask questions to which I obviously know the answer. Like, I can't, why is this not? I know why that's not happening. Like, we know why he hasn't fired Mike McCarthy, because Mike McCarthy's in the last year of his deal, and generally over the last few years, they've won 12 games, right? Yeah, we've had a rough start, and maybe in a different building, Woody Johnson would have gone, thinking's overrated. Quote, actual quote that he gave to the media yesterday. Maybe Woody Johnson would have gone, you know what, thinking's overrated, just fire the guy, right? And he would have booted Mike McCarthy out of the building, and we'd have a whole new coach. Jerry Jones doesn't do that. For better or worse, and it's probably worse at this point, it's not a move that's going to happen. So why ask the question?
Do you have a billionaire take on Jerry going on the Attacking the Radio show?
I already gave you my billionaire take, that if he was...
The people need it.
Look, obviously, morally, Jerry Jones probably shouldn't be on radio stations saying that, threatening to make the host lose their job. I'll get 2 more people in the chair if you're going to ask me questions I don't like. But as a billionaire, look, if he was a good billionaire, Howard Hughes would have bought that station already, and it would be playing Freebird on loop. It wouldn't be a cowboy station anymore. It would be playing Howard Hughes' favorite song every minute. And if he had to, hey, I didn't catch this, rewind it, he would just reboot the song with a start, right? That's what that station would be doing, not threatening to fire the host.
On its way to becoming a parking lot within a few years.
Right, yeah.
This is before I destroyed the
turn
whole
it
thing.
into gravel.
So, in other words, Jerry Jones, pretty tame billionaire, merely threatening people's jobs.
And this is the Jerry Jones story, right? We think of him as this eccentric Howard Hughes guy. I'm going to land my chopper in the middle of the field, right? He's not. He's quietly much more normal than that. For example, even that chopper thing, right? You saw that, right? The landing the chopper in practice.
Yeah.
It looked like that chopper was going to drop itself at the 50-yard line, and Jerry would just get out, and everyone had to clear. Like, no, it went off into the corner somewhere where the helipad was. Like, it just parked quietly in the side. He's not that guy. He likes to play that guy, but he isn't that guy.
I think it's more that he's stuck on his priors. It's like, I believed in Mike McCarthy. I believed in Jason Garrett.
He's just not a knee-jerk guy. Think of Jason Garrett. Think of how long he clung on to Jason Garrett, right? He's not firing Mike McCarthy after, 5 games.
Can't wait to see what happens after this year, though.
Yes. Well, next year, that's different. I think people's contracts might not be renewed, but he's not doing it.
Potentially.
He's not doing it week 6.
No. All right. Let's hear number 3 here.
We are absolutely back in business.
Yep.
Just when I thought we were done, we are back in it. The Jets are going to go on. Listen to me right now, McAfee.
Okay.
The Jets are going to win 7 of their next 9 games.
Okay.
Rodgers is going to get hot as hell.
Whoa.
This is not going to make Garrett Wilson unhappy. It's going to unlock Garrett Wilson. This offense is suddenly going to look markedly better. That will bring a little fire to the defense. This is exactly what we needed, and we are back. And I got the jersey back to prove it.
Happy for you, Greeny.
All right, I have a Greenberg question for you, because I didn't grow up with, Mike and Mike wall to wall, et cetera. So I'm not too familiar with his earlier career baseline. Has Mike Greenberg always been opinionated and a take show guy, or is this an evolution of the last couple of years?
I'd never listened to Mike and Mike for a couple of reasons. I grew up in the Boston area where ESPN radio, when that started, their tentacles of ESPN radio started spreading out across the nation. It didn't happen in Boston. We had local sports radio.
So couldn't penetrate the Boston market.
No, it could not. The fact that Boston went from one station to two back in 09-ish was like a minor miracle. It was local radio. So if you're in like Philadelphia or I think New York, Boston, you get your local radio. ESPN radio, that goes to the places that don't have. I mean, Boston radio, you would have loved Boston radio back in the day.
But I always got the impression that Mike Greenberg was more of the sort of standard host guy, and then now he's becoming a Shouty Show.
But when it was Mike and Mike, I mean, the little that I heard of it, I think they both gave their opinions. I don't know how much of a blatant Jets fan he's been.
I think he's always been that. But because that makes it even more fake to me, right? Like, we know that Stephen A. and Skip Bayless are playing characters, but they've always played those characters. Whereas Greenberg appears to be, in front of our very eyes, transitioning from relatively moderate host to hot take shouty guy. And I'm like, you can't do that, like, after 20 years of this. Like, I don't care what you think.
I mean, I think more for me is the national sports media has always tried to be unbiased, or they've always tried to show themselves as unbiased. And I feel like that's been broken a lot in recent years.
Deliberately.
And that part I don't understand either. So basically anything that I don't understand is growing and becoming more. Like, I don't understand
you do understand it. You just don't like it. Like,
I hate it. Like, I don't understand how. Now, listen, he's a guest on McAfee.
Yeah.
That's fine. I think that's kind of funny, right? Like, that's like he's playing the role of delusional Jets fan.
But he's also doing this in his own show.
I know. I don't understand it on your own show or on a Get Up or anything like that.
But you get it. It's the same. The program has become self-aware. Like, they have understood that this engagement, like, oh, look, he's a Cowboys fan, he's burning his jersey. Like, people have twigged that this is a thing. This gets people engaged. This creates furore. Mike Greenberg openly advertising that he's an angry Jets fan moves the needle. So let's do that more.
I think people love relishing in other people's sadness, right?
Sure.
Especially like college football. Like, nothing. Your own college football team could lose, but you're like, well, the rival lost, and you just watch the rivals be sad, and you're okay, right? People do like that a lot. But like Greenberg, and like the Skip is like, oh, I'm the mad Cowboys fan. But Greenberg is like the delusional, optimistic Jets fan at all times. Every move is like, all right, this is the Super Bowl. Like, I don't understand how anyone from the other 31 fan bases actually wants to hear and listen to that and relate to optimistic Jets fan. Sorry.
I mean, I just think it's just another branch of this. Like, we have discovered that actually engages people, so we're going to lean into it, even if it's fake and manufactured.
Greeny says the Jets are back again. Like, they're sitting here at 2-4. He was going to be sad, but instead they flew Davante Adams in overnight. Now they're back and we're good.
Now they're going to the Super Bowl.
Now it's the Super Bowl.
Right. Do we have a last one?
That was 3.
No, I think there's one more.
There's a 4th?
I believe so.
You must be new to the Will Levis party, because if you know anything about this party, they're not very good.
How the hell he get these commercials then, man?
He eats
I mean, see, that's the problem with America.
He's got taste
that's the
buds
problem
like
with
Banner
America
last
right
week.
there. Right there's the problem with America. We got to stop rewarding mediocrity. You understand what I'm trying to say? You should be able to accomplish it. How you gonna get a mayonnaise commercial? You understand? And you looking like, and you playing like that? Yeah. I mean, come on.
We gotta come on.
Yeah, I stand with Stephen A. Can't be rewarded mediocrity. I tell my kids, we do not celebrate expected accomplishments. Like, oh, you lost a tooth? You want money for that? You're supposed to lose your teeth. You know what I'm saying?
Did you see the clip, which I assume was taken from a Manning passing academy, where Will Levis asked Peyton Manning, how do you manage, the commercial side of it, endorsements, putting your brand out there with being a quarterback, being a football player? And Manning obviously was like, well, look, I've done my fair share of commercials down the years. But he sort of said, you've got to make sure football comes first and don't give people the ammunition for this, right?
How did he tactfully say, I was good before I got the commercials?
So that's what it boils down to, right? That's the problem. Like, go get your money, go get your endorsements, do whatever, but you got to be good. Otherwise, you're going to take crap for it, because people like Stephen A. are just waiting for it. Look, Will Levis has got a commercial and he's playing like crap right now. Let's hit him. You're like, it's either if you genuinely believe that Will Levis filming a Mayo commercial is impacting his play right now, it's a valid point. If you just want to crap on him because he's playing badly, it's it's bullshit. It's nothing. It's not like, again, do you think that Will Levis's commercial endeavors are currently affecting his NFL play?
No.
Either because he's busy right now filming or because when he should have been doing something previously, he was busy filming. No?
No, I don't think it affects.
Then it's a meaningless criticism. It's a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah, it just makes you, maybe you're not going to get more endorsements.
Now,
might not be starting long.
Because again, this is an argument that's evolved as well. Like that used to be the criticism. Oh, if he's too focused on the commercials, right? And that means he's not in the film room grinding, right? That's our problem right here. Now they've realized that that's not what's going on, and that's kind of a disingenuous argument. And they're just simply making the argument that you are not good enough to have that commercial. That's who made Stephen A. the arbiter of who deserves to get commercial money. I mean, just piss off.
I mean, Will Levis could easily turn around and be like, forget it. Forget it. I mean, Stephen A. has been grinding Will Levis film, and he could tell that he's not seeing the field, and he needs to get in his playbook more. And you're not, if you are doing mayonnaise commercials, you're not in your playbook.
Right.
The biggest red flag in all of this is that Will Levis put mayonnaise in his coffee, and we should have seen all of the crazy on-field play coming based off of that in college. We knew that at the time. He's dipping bananas into mayo. He's putting mayo in coffee.
And eating.
We should know he's going to have falling over pick sixes and falling over interceptions, and he's going to be taking out ball boys on the sideline. We should have seen this coming at Kentucky.
I can't remember who tweeted this, but it's amazing, and I wish I could give them credit because it's genius. Somebody tweeted back in 2022 or something, right? Remember when Will Levis just took a bite out of a banana without peeling it? He tweeted that banana skins contain some trace element of some dangerous chemical that causes mental imbalances. He's like, Levis is going to be a turnover machine at the next level. I'm like, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. He tweeted it, he retweeted it yesterday. It was like, I told you. My scouting notes, they had it nailed. I'm like, that's phenomenal.
Really, Brian in the chat says Steve needed that 33rd team money after bankrolling the Tooth Fairy for 4 kids.
Yeah.
See, that's why we had to cut off the Tooth Fairy. There's too many kids, too many teeth.
Tooth Fairy's got expensive. It's inflation along with everything else. Kids they're not happy with $1. You got to have higher notes than that these days.
We do not, as you heard earlier, we do not celebrate the Tooth Fairy in my home.
We don't celebrate it.
No, we do not.
Just Roy Keane.
Man, that was fun. That was good Shouty Show segment. Let's get to PrizePicks lineup. And, producer Ben reminds me, I'm 9 for 9 on picks because I did have more than.
Because Caleb Williams
had more than a half yard.
Yeah.
Back in week 1. I'm 9 for 9. Perfect 9 for 9 on my PrizePicks lineups. So 2 straight weeks, winning the full thing. Last week, James Cook misses the game, so 2 for 2 last week. So we're going to do this week's PrizePicks. Again, it's tough to keep this up. There's a lot of pressure here.
Yeah.
But the people are asking. They're all asking for this. So you ready?
Yep.
PrizePicks projections for this week, my picks. We're going Sam Darnold. I'm going to be super positive this week.
Okay.
Sam Darnold more than his 237.5 passing yards.
Against the Detroit
Lions.
Okay.
The Lions are susceptible in the secondary,
And they just lost their best pass rusher.
And I think the Lions are going to put points up. I know Flores' defense is great, but we just saw the Packers. They put up a lot of points on the Vikings. It got into a shootout a couple weeks ago. So I think we have shootout potential here in this game. So more than 237.5 for Sam Darnold. I'm going Patriots wide receiver Demario Douglas.
Ooh.
More than his receiving projection of 41.5 receiving yards against Jacksonville. Now, he's been at 55+ in 3 of the last 4 games. But more importantly, Drake May and him, they're going to have a great connection. Drake May, Demario Douglas. Drake May likes to work the middle of the field. The Jags defense is awful against slot receivers. I don't know if we have that stat handy or not, but intern Anthony has. I'll be relaying that stat tomorrow on our game preview of Patriots Jags. But Demario Douglas more than 41.5 receiving yards. Douglas is a playmaker. Drake May loves throwing those option routes to the middle of the field. And then going back to the Detroit game, Jameson Williams more than his receiving projection of 49.5 receiving yards. He's been at 75+ in 4 of his 5 games. And this is just one. I'm just looking for one pass.
I was going to say, yeah.
Right? We're looking for a deep bomb against Flores' attacking defense Jared Goff and the Lions have done better against Flores in that defense over the last. Like, he was excellent against the blitz last year. Jameson Williams is going to have some big play opportunities. So I know what the people are thinking. They want to play along with me. They're like, Steve's 9 for 9. We trust him. We're going to play along as well. And you can do that.
Certainly,
get the PrizePicks app.
All of the evidence so far suggests that you should be replicating Steve's slate and, having your lineup exactly the same.
Yeah. So if you want to match my lineup, there it is. Sam Darnold, more than 237.5 passing yards. Demario Douglas, more than 41.5 receiving yards. And Jameson Williams, more than 49.5 receiving yards. You could do that by downloading the PrizePicks app and use the promo code CheckTheMic. All right? Check the mic, $50 instantly when you play $5. So that's what you're going to want to do.
All right.
Join in with me.
Mine will be coming tomorrow.
Let me tell you more about PrizePicks before
almost
we
got back in the game. Came up short.
You've hit a couple at least.
I hit everything except one. I got, like last week, I went, tried to go big, went in with 4, and 3 of the 4 came in, and the Cardinals fumbling everything away meant that Kyler Murray did not hit more than his rushing.
This is your week. I'm feeling it. So if you want to play, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less, like I just did, on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CheckTheMic. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CheckTheMic on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's all guaranteed. PrizePicks. Run your game. And as you saw last week, they've got the flex play. They've got the injury protection.
Yeah.
If a player doesn't play.
Comes in handy if you're Steve.
You can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. A lot of great ways to play over at PrizePicks. So last time, check the mics, the code, $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup.
Nice.
Is that it for us today? Or do we have any mailbag?
We got a mailbag. I think just one quick one to read out. A lot of people have been emailing in with self-inflicted injury stories, and they're very good.
I got eliminated from the email. So you got added to the email list?
Yeah. Because
I'm no longer getting these emails now. So I need my email added to the list so I can see these.
Big shame. Anyway, this one came from Spain. Good night from Spain. I was listening to the Mailbag episode where you talked about the Injury Hall of Fame. As soon as you mentioned the topic of conversation, I remembered the famous Ever Banega injury, Argentinian soccer player from Valencia at the time. Banega stopped for gas and forgot to apply the handbrake in his car. Then, while refilling the tank, the car rolled backwards and ran over him. He had to get surgery on his ankle/lower leg, spent over a year sidelined, and took a while to get back to the playing level he had at that moment. Taking into account that this is the Injury Hall of Fame, including all sports, I think it at least deserves a mention because we didn't have soccer ones previous.
Yeah, that's wow.
Love the new format of the show and so much content. Thank you all and keep up the good work. From Jorge, I assume that's pronounced in Spain.
Wow. Yeah, that's frightening. Do you ever have that fear? I think cars adjust for that these days, don't they? They kind of know.
Yeah, I mean, in automatics, you'll have the park thing. In a manual, you would have the parking brake on. I don't think I've ever not put it on.
Yeah, me neither. But I mean, it's still like nightmare type stuff.
You see a lot of those videos on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, where people don't put the handbrake on and the car rolls across the street or down a hill or whatever. Like a lot of them out there, apparently.
All fake.
Must be a fairly significant epidemic of people not applying the handbrake.
It's all the real world's fault.
Yeah.
It's all fake. Most of the funny videos you see, staged, fake. It's all fake. Like, oh, we got this behind-the-scenes recording at a gas station. No, you didn't. You set it all up.
Okay.
I don't believe anything. I don't believe anything these days.
Turned into quite the cynic in your old age.
Real world's fault. I blame CT, the real world.
Nothing's real, including your hair color.
And with that, it is time to go. Do you know CT from the real world?
I don't know.
Played Ultimate Stratego together back in the day.
Great. It's perfect.
My degrees of separation to other people, always incredible.
Start the music and leave the building.
Tomorrow's our Week 7 preview show. Check the mic, 10:30 a.m. It's live right here on YouTube. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow with more Check the Mic.